Hi guys, really good to be with you now. I'm actually going to be talking with you, at you, for about 20-25 minutes. So if you want to, why don't you go and grab a coffee or a cup of tea and a slice of cake or a banana if that's more to your taste. And then we'll dive into this conversation. On Monday last week, we met together at the church building, which is where I am right now, for something called Vision Conversations. And it was a really good night. There was a good number of people here, but unfortunately, the technology wasn't great. And so it was difficult for those of you joining in on Zoom. It was hard for you to really engage in the conversation, and the recording of that session was not much better. Hence why I'm doing this video now, so that those who couldn't be there on the night can join in with the conversation, as well as those who struggled on the night to engage. And now actually that we've had a bit more time to reflect, and we've had a number of conversations with folk who've offered feedback and asked questions, we can now bring a little bit more clarity around a timeline or a roadmap, to use one of the government buzzwords, for how and when we will begin to regather in our church building and as a church community again. I started the conversation last week by drawing our attention to the words of Jesus in Revelation chapter 3. There he's speaking to the 7 churches in Asia Minor, which is now Turkey. And it's obvious that they're all different. They each have their own unique challenges, but the thing they all had in common was the challenge to hear what the Spirit was saying to the churches. And we too, in the middle of a global pandemic, are faced with the same challenge to hear what the Spirit is saying to us as a church. You know, we're not the same as the church down the road. There's loads of great churches in Worcester, but we're all different, and that's okay. We have a unique set of challenges, and we have got to remain open to what God is saying to us, how the Spirit is leading us through this time. And we can't afford to be influenced or distracted by what others are doing or not doing that's different to us. We've got to remain focused on what God has called us to. And it's worth saying again that this is an open dialogue. We really want to have your input as a church, as a church body. We want to be engaged in ongoing conversation around all of this. We have lots of thoughts and ideas and even plans going forward as a leadership team, but nothing is set in stone. We've got to remain open as open as we can to change, to trying things out, to making mistakes and getting things wrong, to experimenting with new ways and new thinking. Because the future, if we're honest, it's still a little bit uncertain. And even though we don't really know what the future holds, we do know who holds the future. And we can be confident in that knowledge. So please get involved with this conversation. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to have separate individual conversations with you if you've got any questions or thoughts, or if you really sense that God is speaking to you about something in particular. So let me just remind you of our vision as a church. Simply put, we are a family on a mission to bring life to the city. A community for everyone to belong, with a life-changing message for everyone to believe, and a vision to see everyone become the people God has created us to be. But the question is, how do we do this? How do we do that in this world as we know it right now? Because life and church now looks so different, doesn't it? As we begin to emerge from this global pandemic, we're increasingly becoming aware of the seismic shifts that are taking place in both society and within the church. And so as a leadership team, we have actually been engaged in much prayer and conversation for some time now about how we as a church will need to realign our vision to the meeting, to meet the rising needs within the community, as well as the challenges that we face as a church community. The overarching problem for the world is obviously one of discipleship, the need to find and follow Jesus. We wholeheartedly believe, don't we, that Jesus is the answer to the problem. And our local church vision will help us to be part of the solution. So what do we need to do to make sure that we're fulfilling our vision, the vision that God has given to us? Well, the first thing that we need to do is identify some of the problems or challenges that we feel as though we're faced with as a community of faith. And the team have talked and prayed around this for some time. We feel that this is where we're at as a church, and we feel like this is the best way to articulate the problem and the challenges before us. We don't feel as though we currently have an organisational structure or meeting pattern to effectively enable Christian discipleship, evidenced through participation in Lifehouse gathered environments and spiritually fruitful lives in scattered environments. And so we've been focused on developing a strategic plan, if you like, across 4 areas over the course of the next 12 to 18 months. And the issues that we have with our building, of course, continue to create very real challenges for us and will undoubtedly impact decisions going forward. But we don't want the building to stop us from being the church and becoming the people God has created us to be. So the 4 areas that we've been focused on are these. Firstly, gatherings. Secondly, developing team. Thirdly, creating a discipleship pathway. And fourthly, mission and community hubs. And for the sake of time, we were only able to focus in on one of those key areas at the meeting on Monday because we really needed to devote much time in our conversations to the issues around our building as well, which I'll come to shortly. But before I go any further, at our meeting last week, we broke down at one point into groups for some discussion around a couple of really key questions, which really underpin, if you like, this conversation, because the answers to these questions will provide us with a real sense of direction and purpose as we move forward. The first 2 questions were quite simple, possibly. What is discipleship and what is church? And rather than digging into the answers to those questions, perhaps you can spend a little bit of time just now thinking about those questions in your own time. But they are really important questions because if we can't answer them, then we're on shaky ground before we get started, aren't we? But the thing that we concluded was this. If you focus on building the church, you rarely get disciples. But if you focus on making disciples, you will always get the church. And that's actually a quote from a church leader now in America called Mike Breen. Henry Ford puts it this way: if we keep doing what we've always done, we'll always get what we've always got. So the next question goes a bit deeper, and to be truthful, it's much harder to answer. It was this: what elements of pre-COVID church life really helped us to be effective disciple makers? What elements of pre-COVID church life really helped us to become effective disciple makers? And again, why don't you just take a little bit of time to think about that now? But read the question carefully, because we're not talking about what elements of pre-COVID church life you really enjoyed. We're actually talking about what elements of pre-COVID church life helped us as a whole church become effective disciple makers. There's a big difference. And so for the remainder of this video, I just want to focus in on what we feel like our gatherings could look like as we emerge from lockdown. And actually, as I said before, since we last met on Monday, the team have been able to meet again to chew through some of the feedback and reflect on the conversations that we've had with different people. And so it now feels like we can be even clearer in terms of a bit of a roadmap going forward. We obviously place a high value on Sunday gatherings. They've been a crucial part of our church life and community for forever, and they remain vital to everything that we are and do. But we've got to always approach our gatherings through the lens of discipleship. The way we gather as a church is important because the size of a group often determines what can be achieved. For example, we know that it's just harder to develop deep trusting relationships in large crowds. It's doable, but it's harder. And likewise, there are certain elements of discipleship that are best explored in different sized groups, often smaller sized groups. And this thinking is based on the way that Jesus lived his life and was intentional about the time, for instance, he spent with the crowds of followers against the time he spent with just his 12 disciples, and again with his inner circle of 3 closest apostles. Each group was not mutually exclusive. There was plenty of overlap as relational connections developed and multiplication happened as individuals grow and disciples are made. So we know that church is not the building, it's the people. And I don't think that we need to emphasize that too much more here at Lifehouse. But we've got to be practical, haven't we, and realize that our buildings are helpful. And we praise God for the building that we do have and the investment that has gone into this over the years. Our buildings are helpful for us to create community and reach out into the community. And we also know that whilst church is not restricted to a Sunday, it is perhaps practically one of the better days to gather together, as most people, not all people, and we do need to think about that, but most people don't work on Sundays. So I want to break our gatherings down into Sunday gatherings and midweek gatherings. Both are important for different reasons. Further still, I want to break our Sunday gatherings down based on numbers of people, on the basis that according to the Jesus model, where different elements of discipleship happen in different sized groups. So pre-COVID, we were regularly gathering around about 80 to 100 people on a typical Sunday morning, including children. Even though our church community is probably made up of quite a lot more than that, but not everybody attended church services every week. And of course, we want to maintain our whole church celebration gatherings, but only twice a month. That's our thinking at this moment in time. So we'll be focused on creating environments with vibrant worship, relevant and accessible teaching and preaching, real life stories and testimonies. And these environments, these Sunday celebration gatherings, will hopefully be a place where you feel confident to invite friends and family too. And then on each alternate Sunday, we will gather together as church in mid-sized groups or clusters of around 20 to 30 people. And clusters, as opposed to celebration gatherings, cluster gatherings will be focused on sharing life together with warm fellowship, delicious food, praying and worshiping together, as well as unpacking relevant discussion-based teaching. Clusters will happen in various locations around the city, but there will always be one that meets here in the church building. Now, no doubt there will be a number of different things running through your head right now. Some of you you'll be thinking, really? That's a massive cultural change, Matt. Would it just not be easier and less frightening to carry on the way that we always have done? Well, the short answer to that is not necessarily. Because whatever we do and however we regather, it's going to take a lot of time, a lot of energy, resources, and hard work to do it really well. And we will be basically starting from scratch with nearly every ministry team throughout the life of the church, as well as adding new teams around the audio and visual ministries to broadcast our services live. But we do recognise that because we as a team have been journeying this for so much longer than everybody else, it's going to take time to adjust and engage with a new pattern of gathering. So let me just walk us through a bit of a roadmap, which I think will help all of us readjust to a new way of gathering going forward, by taking a bit more of a phased approach to our regathering. So on the screen right now, you will see a graphic which is a roadmap, and it will help us just walk and talk through how we see things develop. So you'll see there that in August we are planning to continue meeting as church online every Sunday morning at 10:30, and we've got a brilliant summer series lined up with some guest speakers coming in for that too. It's called A Message in a Bottle, Words of Hope for a World in Need. We're really looking forward to that. And throughout the month of August, our cluster groups will be organising some social events. So keep your ear to the ground and keep your eye on emails and messages for when those social events are being planned for. And then you'll see as we go through the roadmap that every couple of months something changes, something develops. And through September and October, we are planning to regather back into the church building, which is really, really exciting. For those of us who are here on Monday night, you could see how we could make that work. We are going to increase our capacity, and hopefully as restrictions lift, there will be no restrictions, and we can gather as many people as we can safely in the church building. But you'll notice there that there will be space for social distancing in our indoor gatherings here in the church building. And we're going to create some space in the balcony for social distancing. If you are a little bit hesitant to come back to church in the building with so many people, then the balcony will be a great place for you to feel as though you've got that distance, that social distancing, and space for you to come back into the church safely. We will be carrying on with church online, and also our midweek clusters as they exist now will continue throughout September and October. Once we come to November, the nights will be drawing in, of course, and we're getting closer and closer to Christmas. But what we are planning to do is introduce a Sunday cluster. So for 3 or 4 Sundays in the month, depending on which month it is, we will be continuing to meet in person in the church building. And then for one Sunday, the first Sunday of November and December, we will be meeting in smaller group sizes, mid-sized groups of around 20 to 30 people in our clusters. And if you've not been a part of a cluster yet, I would really encourage you, and we will be encouraging you to join a cluster, to get involved with the life of a cluster. They're so key and important for us as a church going forward. You will also see that we're carrying on with church online and midweek clusters. Another addition in November is that we will be introducing kids' work into our Sunday in-person gatherings here in the church. There's a bit of work to do, gathering team and creating a program for that, but we're confident that by November we can reintroduce kids' work into our Sunday gatherings, which will be absolutely amazing for the kids. We're really looking forward to that. Similarly, that's what it looks like in December. And then after Christmas, as we enter into the new year, the plan is, and we will keep reviewing this as we go along, but the plan is to introduce a second Sunday cluster. So the first and third Sundays will be cluster groups. The mid-sized community groups we call clusters will be happening in different locations. And as I said before, there will always be one of those clusters that meets here in the church building on a Sunday morning, So if we have people come, members of the public or people wander in or want to check out the church, then there'll always be somebody gathered here. It will just look a little bit different to what a normal Sunday celebration would look like. And then, of course, we'll carry on with church online and with our in-person gatherings throughout January and February. As I said, we will be reviewing, as we go along, we'll be reviewing this and making tweaks and changes. And our prayer is that as we make these changes, that it will have a massive impact on the life of our church and create environments that are conducive for discipleship, that will help us as a church community be more effective in making disciple makers and communities. So we're really looking forward to everything that's ahead of us. And as I've said many times before, we don't know what the future holds, but we do know who holds the future. So I would really encourage you to open up your heart, open your ears, and hear what the Spirit is saying to our church, to know how God is leading us and guiding us into future days. So it's very worth just touching briefly on the issues to do with our building. If I went into depth, we'd be here for hours. We had a good conversation on Monday night. And if you've got any questions or concerns or comments from what I update you with now, then do let us know. But there's a couple of things in particular that we just need to update you about in terms of the building. The first one is many of you will know that we've had a building project plan for some time now, and in fact for many, many years, but the latest version of that project plan came to a climax, if you like, about 2 or 3 years ago. And we had an architect do some drawings for us, and we worked really hard on that to make the most of the building that we've already got. And then kind of the big picture of that plan was to build a first floor extension over the back of the building to create a new worship environment, and then every other space in the building would be turned into a community hub. We had those plans, the costings of those plans, revised just before COVID, and originally it was looking as though it would cost us around about $600,000 to complete the whole project. And then once we had the costings revised, literally just before COVID, it turns out that the cost of the project almost doubled to £1.2 million. And it was a bit of a bombshell when we heard that. But it's just the way that costs have grown and developed over those 2 or 3 years. And so we're back to the drawing board in many respects, because we just don't feel like we can justify spending £1.2 million on the blueprint of this building here. And so we've just been asking God, praying and asking God, what's next? What do we do? What are the decisions that we need to make? And we feel as though we need to push the door of opportunity to see if anything comes about in terms of moving from this location to another location in Worcester as a central point, as a hub for our gatherings as a church and our missional outreach. So join with us in thinking and praying around that. There are a number of issues in this building. The second thing that we really need to update you on is the state of the roofs, and there's a significant leak in the roof here, as there always has been, but it's become more significant in the main worship area. And then the roof behind me in the welcome area, which you'll be familiar with, has just got increasingly worse. We've had a well-known builder come to inspect it, and he has advised us to basically close off that room as a health and safety risk. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to totally close off that space just to keep people safe, and we'll have to think creatively when we do come back into the church together on Sundays, how we fellowship together, how we do teas and coffees and that kind of thing, and all of the ancillary spaces, we'll have to make good use of them. So we've already approached estate agents to give us a market appraisal on this property here, but we really are praying hard, talking hard, planning hard, looking for other possible opportunities that might arise in terms of buying another property, pushing doors in conversations with people, good connections that we've made over recent months. And I'd really encourage you to join with us on that journey. There's some big decisions that need to be made, and they're not easy decisions, but we really do need to respond to the way that God is leading us into the future. So where do we go from here? The plan is to meet again, to have another vision conversation here at the church, and we'd really encourage as many of you as possible to come and join with us on that one. We'll be going into a little bit more detail about some of the other areas that we've been focused on, and we will also want to provide as much opportunity for question and answers to really dig deep into some of the issues that we've already talked about. So for now, I'll love you and leave you. I wish you all the best, and pray God's blessing and favour upon your life. If you need to get in touch, then get in touch. We'd love to have a conversation with you. God bless you. Bye for now.